Hey, y'all, welcome back to another Inside the Wave episode. This is your Fear the Wave collective. Make sure you donate to support our student athletes. If you can't do that, at least like the video, subscribe, turn on post notifications. Let's get this momentum rolling that Tulane football is bringing us. I'm happy to be joined, as always, by my co-host, Isaac. Isaac, how you doing?
Doing great, John. Tulane just got ranked last night, so a lot to be excited about. We'll talk a little bit later, more so in the preview podcast, about what the tiebreakers look like and how this ranking actually affects the tiebreakers for the American Athletic Conference Championship game and not just Tulane CFP hopes.
Yeah, absolutely. I know Coach Summerall told us that, he told the team it's great being ranked, but it really doesn't mean anything. I think it means something. I'm excited about it. I remember a time where I was a student and our football team went 2-10. So, if I could see where I know Coach Summerall is used to winning, but it hasn't always been this way here. So I know that the team probably can't get too caught up in it, but as fans, you should absolutely get caught up in it. It's a great time to be a Tulane football fan.
No doubt, John. I remember those days not too long ago, just 3 seasons ago. It's hard to believe. And since that 2-10 season with Hurricane Ida, Tulane actually has the fourth most wins in the entire nation. So that's over the last 3 seasons, including the majority of this season. Obviously, we haven't played 3 full years. And Tulane is just really killing it. The only schools that are ahead of them are Oregon and Georgia and
Might
do
have
you remember
lost you
the
there.
last
Is it
one?
Ohio State maybe?
Michigan's still ahead of Tulane, but Tulane is
Even
in
after
fourth
this
place.
season they're having right now?
Yeah, they have 33 wins, Georgia 35, Oregon 32, and Tulane 31.
Well, we just might pass up Michigan by the end of the season. I think everyone talks about the how impressive the turnaround was from 2-10 to what was it, 12-2, but that's obviously incredibly impressive. But what's even more impressive is the fact that it wasn't just 2-10 to 12-2. It's now been sustained success over three consecutive seasons. And that includes over two different coaches, two different quarterbacks, a lot of different players. Um, but we could talk about how great Tulane's been recently all day. We might even dedicate an episode to that sometime over the summer. But right now we have as much content as we could ask for. We just blew out Temple. It was 52-6. I think I predicted 52-10, and you predicted 52-12. So we were pretty close. That's why you watch Inside the Wave, I guess. But yeah, I'd love to hear what your general thoughts were on the game.
Yeah, we expected the demolition, John, and there's been a lot of buzz on social media recently about how Fear the Wave has played a huge role in Tulane's success. And while that is true, this coaching staff has done a great job, and we have a talented roster of players, some new guys and some guys that have been here for 5, 6 years. One of those who have been here for 6 seasons now is Caleb Thomas. Got the start on senior day. He had actually started some games 4 or 5 years ago. So it was great to see him start again. He's a great offensive lineman for Tulane. It's just that they have 5 studs on the O-line. They were one of the 10 semifinalists for the O-line award given out to the best unit of O-linemen in college football. One of two non-Power 5 schools. I know John Summerall doesn't like to say G5. And as you were talking about the rankings, Coach Summerall told us that, if Tulane gets in, they're backdooring their way in. They don't deserve this. But the reality is that Tulane has really earned themselves a spot in the top 25 nationally.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to see that number hopefully climb over the next few weeks if we can keep winning. Without dragging on too long here, I would love to jump to the next segment that we do. One of my favorite, I guess you could say traditions. It's now kind of becoming a tradition. Your famous ipop's top players, where you pick and rank your top 6 players from each match. And we've been enjoying going through them together on the show and kind of, you see what they are on Twitter, most fans do, but you get to kind of hear the rationale behind the ordering of them. when you watch these videos. So I think last time we went in reverse order, 6-1, and that went pretty well. So if you agree, I'd love to hear who you have at number 6 right now.
Sure, I'm loving doing this, John. I'm glad that we brought this to podcast form. This is something that I've been tweeting about the last 2 years, and I actually put out a poll today and decided to do something differently than I normally do. Normally, I tweet out who my top players are, and then we've been talking about them on the podcast, but we're actually revealing them for the first time right here. So if you're watching this video, you are the first one to know who my top players are this week in Tulane's big win versus Temple. I put out a poll 2 hours ago, and we've got some votes. Makhi Hughes had 55% of the vote for being my number one top player. I asked who they thought would be number one. And then it was pretty split even between Darian Mensah, Thompson, and Shazz Preston for second place in that poll. Let's start at number 6, John. I texted you about this briefly. I didn't give away any of my players, but I did have to just make sure I was doing this right because the defense was going to pitch a shutout, and they hadn't pitched a conference game shutout in such a long time. It was going to be a very rare feat for Tulane football. And they just played so well across the board. It wasn't just a shutout, but Tulane had given up only 5 first downs the entire game, 56 passing yards, and 158 total yards. Those numbers are by far the lowest since Alcorn State in September 2022. I don't really consider them too real of a team. They're an FCS school for this purpose. And so the last time that Tulane gave up 75 passing yards or less to a real FBS school was Army in 2020. And you have to go decently far back to figure out the last time they gave up less than 5 first downs or less than 175 total yards. So a really impressive performance by the defense. The reason why I'm going to only have one defensive player in my ipop's top players this week is because 2 reasons. First of all, on the other side of the ball, you can put up more statistics. And not only did Tulane put up some touchdowns, but they scored 50 points, over 50 points, and had a very efficient day on offense. Game on paper actually put the Temple offense, so the Tulane defense, in the first percentile for Temple offense in terms of EPA per play. The defense was so shut down that even though Tulane was 88th percentile on offense, I just had to include more offensive players because there were 5 players on Tulane who put up some huge numbers on offense. And then on defense, nobody even played 30 snaps. Tulane has done a great job, Greg Gasparotto especially, of shuffling the defense. They have 2 deep at every single position, 3 deep on some of the defensive line, and even a 5th linebacker when Sam Howard's healthy, that they just don't need to play their starters that much. And it's been such a well-rounded effort that I've had this issue in the last couple of weeks that outside of the guys that have a takeaway, it's really hard to figure out which player I put on my top players list for the defense because every single player that's playing a good amount of snaps, including the guys that are even playing like 10 snaps, like Terrell Allen this week, are just having a real impact. And so that's where I'm going with number 6. I'm going with Javon Carter on the defense. This was a tough choice, but Carter really impressed me this week. He had one huge play where he didn't get credit for a forced fumble, but I thought that he really forced it. And he had 3 pressures in just 9 snaps, 7 of which were pass rush. So that's where I'm going to start, John.
That's can't argue with that. I had no idea about those pass rush statistics or pressure statistics. So, good for him. That's how you earn more snaps, I guess. Make the most of your snaps. If you're effective when you're in there, you get more snaps. Simple as that.
Courtesy of Pro Football Focus for that data.
I know how big of a fan of theirs you are. So congrats. Is that his first time on ipop's players?
That would be a great question, and I believe it is. I will say, though, it was a really close call with Lou Tillery this week. I thought that Lou Tillery played great. He also similarly didn't play that many snaps. He played 12 snaps. However, the most that anyone on Tulane's defense played was 27, the most that any outside cornerback, not including Caleb Ransah on the spear position, played, although Ransah also played the same amount, was 25 for Micah Robinson. So it wasn't like Lou Tillery played no snaps. He played 12, 9 in coverage. They ran about 20, 19, 20 plays where they were throwing the ball, so about half. And even though he was in the game for 9 snaps, and was targeted 3 times, which was the most on Tulane's defense, he did not let up a single catch and had a pass breakup in 2 of them. And yes, this is Javon Carter's first game as an ipop's top player, so congratulations to Javon Carter.
Wow, I feel like if anything, we've earned or you've earned at least the viewers liking the video on that because they just caught a seventh ipop's top players when we normally just get 6. So you're getting 7 for the price of 6, which is free, I guess, for both. So so you can do that math. Let's hear who number 5 is.
Yeah, and not only was Javon Carter, is this his first week as an ipop's top player? It's actually his first week as a top player or honorable mention. And we've had quite the amount of players that have been one of the two this week. So exciting to get somebody who hasn't had an honorable mention or a top player appearance on the list, as we've had about 55 players on this Tulane football team, at least an honorable mention. It's just a lot of depth on this team. At number 5, John, I'm going with Mario Williams. I was trying to get in Lou Tillery, but how could you leave off Mario Williams? He had almost 100 receiving yards on the day, which is just a lot, even for a guy like Mario Williams, who we're really getting kind of used to having 100 yards. I was like, we talk about Makhi Hughes having a pedestrian 147 yards, but Mario Williams' 94 yards felt pedestrian as well. Would you agree?
Yeah, he's just so effective with his touches. He's up to 655 yards on the season, which is, as of this past week, a career high for him. And we still have some football left to play. So at the pace he's going, he seems to be putting up his best work later in the season. I wouldn't be shocked if he broke 1,000 with the conference championship and then bowl game / college football playoffs. He's definitely within reach of that kind of standard for a fantastic wide receiver season.
Definitely. I would not be surprised at all, especially if he has a big game versus Navy. Most likely a win and you're in situation here this Saturday. So that would give you a conference championship game and a bowl game, which would get you up to 14 games.
It's doable.
At number 4, I got your guy and who we just had on the podcast earlier this week, Shazz Preston. 50-yard touchdown, shazzle dazzle, as the Uptown Update said. No longer brazzle dazzle. We have shazzle dazzle. Even better, the transfer from Alabama, top 20 recruit in the country from ESPN, top 3 receiver recruit in the class of 2022, also on ESPN's rankings. He had his first catch of his college career, and he only ran 3 routes. So that was good enough for him to have the best PFF grade among all wide receivers in FBS.
Yeah, I've been a big Shazz Preston advocate since spring camp, where I would say, was the best receiver out there. So I'm excited to see him, getting back on the field, getting acclimated, getting more action. I fully expect his production to go up as the season progresses.
At 4, I've got Ty Thompson. This was another guy that I wasn't quite sure if he was going to make my rankings at first. You were like, oh my God, Ty played awesome. And I was like, yeah, but he didn't actually throw a pass, even though he did get some action and some garbage time minutes. And he did attempt 2 passes, but I just could not leave him off with that type of a day. He had a 50-yard touchdown. Shazz had 53, excuse me. Ty Thompson, 50-yard touchdown, which was a 6 expected points added play. By far the biggest play of the day, and he added 25 more yards with his feet.
I'm sorry, he added 25 yards in addition to the long rushing time. I see what you mean. Yeah, Ty Thompson's quickly become. We gotta find a time to get him on the show at some point. He's quickly becoming one of my favorite players, not just because he's productive when he touches the ball, but he really kind of embodies what this this John Summerall team is. And, definitely a guy that wanted to be the starting quarterback. That was obviously his intention when he transferred to Tulane. And when Darian Mensah won the starting job, I don't think anyone really would have blamed him if he kind of checked out or pouted, but instead put the team first, and in doing that, he's found a really good role for himself, kind of in that Taysom Hill type package for NFL fans. Um, and the athleticism he's displaying, he might have a future at the next level because of the way he's bought in, and it's definitely helping Tulane win games. So, absolutely love it when a player's selflessness leads to not just team success but also individual success for them.
I don't think it's been talked about enough, but Tulane is second in the country in red zone scores, and a big part of that, although he just had this 50-yard touchdown, is Ty Thompson. This is a pretty surprising stat. He has 8 touchdowns on the season, which is more than Makhi Hughes had all of last year.
Some guys just have a nose for the end zone, but I can't really tell you what it is that makes those guys attracted to the end zone, because you think Makhi would have had more last year, although he's going crazy this year. But I'm just happy we have a couple of those guys on this team. So that was number 4, right? So we got 3 up next.
No, Ty Thompson was my third place. So we're
You're
now
right, you're
on
right.
to Darian Mensah at number 2. Just still impressed by Ty Thompson having the second farthest rush of the year. It looked like he basically walked into the end zone, but I rewatched it. It's just because he's so fast. I think most players really would have been tackled on that. Darian Mensah had a great day himself. 14 of 20 wasn't as good as of a day as Darian usually has. However, that's still a good day. He threw for 268 yards and 2 touchdowns, added some yards with his feet, and that was good enough for 12 expected points added, which is just a lot. So that's why I put him second in my ipop's top players this week. Also, 0 turnovers.
Yeah, everyone talked about, what is Tulane going to do when Michael Pratt declares for the NFL draft? It happened, and haven't been too disappointed with what I've seen. Excited to have a young quarterback who's super productive. It makes me optimistic for the future of Tulane football.
I think this one's pretty obvious, but at this point, number 1, you guessed it, Makhi Hughes, about 150 yards rushing, over 8 yards per carry, multiple touchdowns on the day, over 7 expected points added, and an 85 PFF score, which is really high for Makhi Hughes because they don't really like Makhi Hughes too much. They've given a lot of credit to the offensive line. This week, they thought that the offensive line did really well in the passing game and pass blocking, but not as much in the run game, actually, which I was surprised a little bit by. But if you go and watch the highlights, Makhi's just bouncing off every defender. He made Temple look like they were Pop Warner players out there. It just looked like men against boys with Makhi Hughes toting the ball. Makhi passed Bill Banker for 7th in school history in career rushing yards. He's now 4th in the country in rushing yards. He has just had an incredible season, became the first Tulane player ever with 7 100-yard rushing games in multiple seasons. And not only did Makhi run the ball well, but the whole team did, really, except for Trey Cornice's fumble, who was running well, as John Summerall said on our podcast on Monday. The whole team ran well. They ran for over 300 yards. It was the 14th season in which they've had multiple team 300-yard rushing games. So that was impressive to me. And not only was it the 14th season that they've done that, but they also just don't do it too frequently.
Makhi Hughes is definitely one of the best running backs in the country, and he has been for quite some time now. He's up to over 1,200 rushing yards on the year, but in the last 2 seasons, he's right around that 2,600 mark. He's got 20 rushing touchdowns. I mean, having a great quarterback is a lot of fun, but when you can run the ball down a team's throat, that's just demoralizing. Makhi Hughes is definitely climbing his way up the charts of the greatest Tulane players to ever suit up.
No doubt, John. 15th time in the last 65 years that they ran for 300 plus yards in a game. And they did the 14th time in the last 65 years earlier this season against UAB. Really impressive. Just all around incredible day for Makhi Hughes. Every week I'm just having to check all the record books and see where Makhi Hughes ranks with everything.
I know he's making your job harder. He's so good. He is Tulane 15-0 in those 15 games where they rushed for 300 yards or more?
That's a good question, John. I'll have to look into that. But what I do know is that John Sumrall has never lost a game when he has outrushed his opponent. It's about 26-0. And Makhi Hughes tied Orleans Darkwa for third in school history in single season rushing touchdowns. I talked about having only 7 last season. Tulane had an inefficient red zone, didn't give Makhi the ball enough. But this year, the coaching staff knows what to do, and he's just there in single season touchdowns with 15, including the 2 receiving. But he tied Orleans Darkwa in just rushing touchdowns with 13. So watch out.
Well, there you have it. Those are ipop's top 6, really top 7 players of the week. So, I'm excited that we've added this segment to our recaps. I think it's pretty entertaining and just a great way to kind of let fans see, past just the surface level numbers in terms of who performed well. So, if you made it this far in the video, you're a real Tulane football fan. I appreciate you. I know Isaac appreciates you too. Make sure you like, subscribe. Isaac, you got anything you want to say?
Congratulations to Javon Carter for his first mention, as well as Makhi Hughes, who just continues to get on every single week. Darian Mensah almost every week as well. Check my Twitter for my ipop's top players honorable mentions, a bunch on the offense and the defense. I'll give a lot more for defense than I did in my top players. And roll ranked wave.